Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 638. Out now on video on demand is Me, Myself, and the Void, a comedy that stars Jack De Sena as a struggling stand-up comedian who finds himself trapped in a place beyond time and space, where he investigates how he wound up motionless on the bathroom floor. Also starring Chris Smith and Kelly Marie Tran, Me, Myself, and the Void is one of the best comedies of 2024 with its witty writing and keen observations on mental health. And joining me now is the director of Me, Myself, and the Void, Timothy Hautekiet. Timothy, how are you today?
Doing well. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This, and I mean when I say this is one of my favorite, if not one of the best comedies I've seen this year, because just in a way that you are able to blend just all these different elements together, and in an independent film as well, nevertheless, like a low budget indie film, which I think is really, really remarkable. But I think at the same time, that goes to show that all you really need is a great idea and a cast and crew and a vision to really pull it off. And I think that's definitely what you guys do here. Um, an observation that I've had this year, and I don't know if it's something you've come across as well, is how COVID, the lockdowns, has,
Hmm.
in all the craziness and hardship that came from that, it also allowed a certain amount of time for projects to grow, creativity to flow. And from what I understand, this movie is kind of born from that time period. Have you found it as well? Have you been talking to filmmakers, fellow, writers and such, and found that that time period has kind of conceived all these different projects, especially, I don't know why, but this year that's really kind of come into fruition, and I've been seeing a lot of that, and it's just something that I've observed myself. I was wondering what your thoughts are on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly can speak to, what was a joy about the experience of taking this film out on the festival circuit was you would bump into, shared themes that other filmmakers clearly found themselves exploring. And then, yeah, there were absolutely like there was a lovely film that we were on the festival circuit with called Footnotes, and it was sort of almost a pandemic era set rom-com, and it was a lovely little film. And yeah, I agree. I think for a lot of people, it's obviously however anyone dealt with the collective trauma that all of the world went through in 2020 is valid. But
Hmm.
I definitely think indeed for a lot of people, I think it led to periods of time of being able to this like unexpected moment where you get to explore uh a creative passion, or like well, if the whole world is shut down, what do people find themselves drawn to? And I certainly can speak that way for myself and Nick Oldershaw, my co-writer. We were certainly in a place where we're like, well, here we are doing our Zoom meetings. It's like, what do we what do we want to do? Like everything's so uncertain, so you find yourself going to what feels familiar, and stories are certainly part of that. So yeah, I definitely noticed that, not just in obviously where Me, Myself, and the Void came from, but yeah, I think you're right. I definitely think, and we're probably going to keep feeling it for years to come. Like it's undeniably like there's a before and an after.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a pre and post. I think it goes in the business and personal lives as well. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. When it comes to this film and the character of Jack, stand-up comedy, how vital was it that that is the profession that you kind of dived into in regards to this story? Could this character could have been a different type of creative? Could have been a writer? Could have been a filmmaker? Is there something about stand-up comedy and kind of like the emotional mental states that come from that profession and the people behind it that would have lent itself better for this film, for this character, this film than any other professions? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was funny. It was I would struggle to answer exactly when we found the moment that we were like, oh, he's 100% got to be a stand-up comedian. Though I think it happened relatively early, and I think obviously, I think if you'd asked me like, oh, is it going to be a story about a struggling filmmaker in his 30s who desperately wants to make something, I probably would have shut that down and be like, no,
Hmm.
too close. It's me. But obviously, my co-writer Nick Oldershaw is it does the comedy circuit, is a stand-up comedian, and I always admired that about him. I've been to go and watch a bunch of his shows, and I've sort of seen what the stand-up comedy scene is like, and I've often, the way I often talk about it, because my early career stuff, I was doing like sketch comedy on YouTube, and every now and then there would be somebody who goes, "Have you ever thought about doing stand up?" And to me, there's almost nothing more terrifying than stand, because you're playing a character, like it's you going up there on stage and you're going to live and die based on how it goes with the audience. I think there's something about the phrase I would always say is, I don't know if I'm willing to be bad at stand-up comedy in order to get good. And I'm too familiar with that craft takes a long time to build. You can't just jump into something and immediately understand how it works, or most people certainly don't have that privilege. But I think after a while it began to feel quite logical to the Jack character, because it's obviously a grind. There's not a lot of the sort of, you have to just kind of keep doing it and be in the scene. We also found that something about the void being lit with spotlights and that kind of like being put on the spot began to feel sort of strangely, I guess he could have been a theater actor, but something about the stand-up of it. And then obviously the fact that we were going to level of comedy into the story, and the idea that what would a stand-up comedian's mind be like, something about that resonated with us. And then I think at some point it just became, we just knew he was gonna have to be a stand-up, and that would sort of connect to the whole, how the film was going to start with, you think you're in a stand-up show, and then, oh no, he's actually already in the void. It just began to all fit to such a degree that we couldn't imagine him as anything else.
And I always find that when it comes to that profession, that world, that there's such a vulnerability to it, because it's just one person up on a stage with a spotlight on them. And as you said before, to kind of, to build their craft, they have to go through almost kind of like a public humiliations, kind of like rituals of humiliation. When they bomb, they're placed in a very, very vulnerable state when that happens. And to get back up there and do it again, it's kind of like diving in shark-infested waters without a cage, right? I mean, you just gotta, you don't know where it's going to turn out, and I think it works so well for the character of Jack, who definitely has his, as we find out in the film, has his vulnerabilities and his problems. But I think something that needs to be said about the character of Jack, for all the flaws that he has, that he's someone who's willing to get back up there again and try it again. And I think that says something about him in his personality, as he does his other traits as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, and I think what's nice about telling a story about somebody who's really driven to do something creative like stand up is that I think what's neat is, if you are somebody who is drawn to express anything, I think you can still relate to the hustle. Like, even if your specific hustle isn't going up on stage and having to make people laugh, I think the process of working on something, performing it, building yourself back up again, that flow, I think creative people, and also I do think anybody, because I think ultimately I don't necessarily believe in the distinction of there are creative people and non-creative people. I just think it's where people choose to apply their creativity. I like to think it's something we can all relate to when you're just drawn to do something.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. When it comes to casting Jack De Sena and Chris Smith in the film, they, in their own rights, have a very, successful in their own in the comedy world. Have a great, anyone out there who hasn't seen the Jack and Chris YouTube channel, I really recommend checking out, because their sketches are fantastic. It's interesting though, because before I got the email about this movie, I think maybe a week before that, I was just scrolling through YouTube shorts, as I want to do sometimes, and I came across one of their sketches in the shorts, and I was watching there, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. It's a nice little kind of like, kismet there. When it came to getting them in the film, and they themselves are so, their creative flow is just so exuberant, and they're so creative in their own way. Does that change in any way the framing of the character, the framing of the film? Do they bring their own kind of observations to this story? And if so, how are you as a filmmaker when you work with people who are in themselves that kind of creative, and especially in a world of like innovative kind of like sketch kind of comedy, which I think Just so it's saying it always, to me, that it's almost kind of seems like short films in a way. They kind of approach a lot of their stuff, you know. And I'm just curious about, you know, when they come on board, are you open to suggestions, observations from them? And does that kind of frame the Jack character and the Chris characters in different ways? Because the chemistry between them two, of course, is incredibly natural, and you see that in the movie as well.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, I would co-sign what you just said about anybody who's out there and hasn't discovered Chris and Jack on YouTube yet. Like, you're welcome. You're about to have a really fun new addition to your subscription feed. And I was just a fan of them. I'd had the privilege of working with them prior to Me, Myself, and the Void. So I'd even had the experience of having some professional experiences with them. I'd worked with them on a comedy sketch for Funny or Die, and before that, we'd done something for my channel. So they're very generous artists, like, as people. Period. Like, I obviously knew that I loved the idea of them performing in the film because, like you said, they have such natural banter, and I was more than confident that they would be able to carry an audience through the necessary emotional beats that a feature film would require. And I think on the front of collaborating, that's the thing. It's like, they're such talented creatives in their own right. They absolutely, I have no doubt that at some point we'll get a Chris and Jack feature just made by them, and they more than have the talent and ability to do it. So I like to think that in any successful collaboration, it's just you need to make sure that you're on the same page about what you're setting out to make. And in that sense, I can certainly say that very early from when I shared the script with them, in which the characters, Nick and I had already named them Chris and Jack. So that they would really know that we wrote it for them with them in mind. And I'm happy to say that, very quickly they sort of got what we wanted to do. Like, they understood what we were trying to say with the Jack character, with the broader mission about talking about this kind of friendship murder mystery thing that takes you through to a story that is ultimately reveals itself to be about the characters and about a character kind of confronting his mental health and the ways in which he's not been great to the people around him, the kind of deeper character story. Like, we agreed so much on what we were trying to make that then within that, what's exciting is, I think as a director, you'd be foolish not to take, suggestions, especially when they feel like they're serving the broader mission of like what you're trying to say with your film. So yeah, we'd have the normal interactions that you have between an actor and a director, where Jack would go, okay, like in this moment, I feel like he's trying to say this, but could we maybe work on that? And it would be this forever back and forth of like passing the ball back and forth and trying to make it stronger. They're also such gifted improvisers. So what we would often do, like the process we built for that would be, we would shoot one take that was incredibly close to the script, like so that we just, just in case, we wound up needing it as scripted. But then once we felt like we had a very solid take like that, it would be fun to sometimes just, okay, one more take, let the camera roll, and have them try some alternate stuff, so that we would have more opportunities in the edit to change things around. So it was just a really cool collaboration, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. They're a total joy to work with.
We've talked about throughout this conversation different elements of the movie: murder mystery, character-driven drama. It's all these different things, fantastical, kind of like almost kind of like existential kind of journey as well. And the editing kind of reflects that. This movie really keeps you on your toes. You're going back and forth. It's surreal. It's deals with memory, black and white, home movies, all these different things. And I think what the really big key here and makes it all work is the editing in the movie. Even though we're going through different worlds and such, the editing flows so well throughout this film. You worked on the editing of the film along with your producers Ryan Turner and Ryan Blue. It's always good to have a couple of Ryans in a production, I always say.
Yeah, exactly. Ryan's only.
Ryan's only. One time it was Chris's, now it's Ryan's. So when you're working on your edit with both Ryans here, do you have things structured in regards to storyboards? Do you structure in regards to, do you have a layout? I mean, how do you go about doing structuring this movie, which I think in its beats, in its flows, in a ways that can go back and forth, runs really smoothly, but I imagine is a very kind of technical, proficient kind of way that you guys logistically kind of have to tackle this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so of course, ultimately the guiding line was certainly still the script, as far as certainly like the initial cut. But actually speaking to editing, what you alluded to, working with Ryan Blewett and Ryan Turner was what was great about it was, we're a small movie, so, we sort of just had to edit it while doing other jobs that could kind of keep us afloat.
Mm,
But what was good about that was it gave us time. And time is actually, when you have it, can be your friend. There's always the risk of forever pushing things down the line and never getting it done. But I think what is nice when you have it is you get chances to take a step away and come back and see it again with fresh eyes. And I actually think having multiple editors in the process was a good example of that, because myself and the Ryans, what we would do is like one of us would do something and then you would pass it on to the next person and then they're watching it afresh. And by the time it comes back around to you, like you're almost watching, like so many different things have happened that you get a chance to like really experience the scene afresh. And so we would try and make each other laugh. We would be brutal, just take entire scenes out and go, does the film
mm,
still work without it? What do we feel like we're missing? And it was actually through this editing process, a good example actually would be we had an original cut relatively quick. And when we were testing it, doing feedback screenings with sort of trusted friends and collaborators and that kind of thing, one thing that we noticed people were saying was that they wanted more. They wanted to know a bit more about the relationship between Jack and Mia, who's wonderfully played by Kelly Marie Tran. And what one thing we basically noticed was the film, the film's working and people are sort of enjoying it for the ride, but they want a bit more depth. And so what was missing was in the original cut of the film, the night of the breakup wasn't actually part of it yet, which is the sort of
mm,
black and white thing that you're sort of alluding to, the black and white sequence where we kind of see the night that everything went wrong for Jack and Mia. And that was something basically that we realized we were going to have to do one pickup day. We were going to have to we sort of decided the following summer we got everybody together. We could only afford to get everyone together for one day, and I sort of went through the edit and with iPhone temp footage was sort of placing in like, okay, and then this line, and then he's going to say this here, and we'll cut back to this moment here. So we made sure that we, placed in this pickup day throughout the edit, so that we knew it would hopefully like elevate the film. And I think I am happy to say that I definitely think if I look at where the film was before that and where it is after that pickup day and how much it increased, I think, the overall quality of the film. I think it's a really good example of like allow the edit to speak to you. And if the film is saying it needs something, take that seriously. It's that famous saying of you make a film three times, right? Like there's the script you write, there's the film you write, there's the film you shoot, and then there's the film you edit. And I think it
mm.
was just one of those things like the edit was telling us there needs to be more from Jack and Mia here in order to make this moment on the couch land even harder. And I'm so glad we went back and got that, because I really think that scene, as it now exists in the film, it's crucial, And yeah, like I think that just came through the process of editing and sort of embracing it.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. I think it's definitely crucial, absolutely, throughout in the film, because this is a movie about this one guy kind of like analyzing his messiness and in the way his life is up to this point. It's interesting to me after watching this movie, and there is a line in the film where Chris's character says, "I'm like, where are we in your Christmas Carol," or something like that, like the
Yeah,
allusion
yeah.
to the Charles Dickens novel. It's interesting to me how every generation, whether it's through book, but if I'm just talking through film specifically, um, films come along about that generation's existential journey kind of film, whether they deal with matters of spiritual, what have you. You have your Christmas carols, like I said, It's a Wonderful Life, Groundhog Day, Eternal Sunshine. These films come up and they tap into the things that are happening with that generation at that time. And Me,
Mm-hmm.
Myself, and The Void definitely does that in regards to where that generation of yourself and Jack are out there. And to me, the number one thing that really shines forth, if It's a Wonderful Life, for example, was dealing with the spiritual, religious even. This movie is dealing with mental health. I mean, that's a key observation in this film more than anyone else. It's about this guy sorting out his shit and realizing he has a problem. He has to go forth and work on it. And for myself, it's something that I've gone through, talk about post COVID. Post COVID me is definitely someone who acknowledges, yeah, flaws in myself in regards to mental health and have been working on it for the last several years. And I'm sure a lot of people out there listening probably gone through the same thing as well. So when it comes to this movie, though, are we still hoping that men in particular, men around Jack's age, my age, your age, um, making sure that we realize that it is important that we do take stock of where we are, and no matter where we are with our ambitions, stations in life, whatever, might be something to work on there. And if so, it's always best to get on top of it now and don't ignore it, because you never know. One day you might find yourself in a position like Jack in this movie, and it's not a good position at all. It's always good to get in front of things before it goes haywire. That's my observation anyway, watching the film.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that and saying that. And yeah, I think it's interesting because, certainly something that as we were going through the process of writing it, Nick and I were like, okay, we're trying to basically dramatize the process of realizing you need to go to therapy, which, it's funny because I think for most people, hopefully, like you said, it doesn't come in the form of something as quite as dramatic as what happens to Jack. But I do think, there's a reason. And I think, I think lots of people are resistant to going to therapy. I think that spans age ranges but I do think in particular men are more resistant, I think, than certainly than women to seek help, because of all kinds of reasons. And we can talk about whether that's in conditioning, whether that's in, but I think, I think one of the things that we felt very strongly about was often films certainly about struggling artists who are trying to, work through something like buddy comedy with this kind of energy would often end with the protagonist learning their lesson and then likely being rewarded in the form of they get the girl and they get to and then they probably find success often in a story like this, right? Like if it's a movie about Drive, we then like to see that character ultimately be rewarded with, and now they're a successful stand-up comedian and everything worked out and they got their dream. And that was something Nick and I felt very strongly we didn't want to do. It's not to say that we haven't seen films like that we've enjoyed over the years, but we felt very strongly like, we wanted the thing that Jack gets to take away is becoming a better person, becoming a better man, and doing and being like, okay, now he's off on his journey of doing the work it requires to be better. And that is the thing that hopefully the audience can full-heartedly celebrate, and that, as far as like the stand-up, he's still doing it, but he's doing it hopefully with a more sustainable mindset, to be able to do it for the long haul, because I think if you pursue creative work with the goal of like exclusively like making it big and not because you're just enjoying the art and enjoying the other things and remembering to be a whole human being, not just singularly focused on the achievement. I think there's a darker. I wouldn't say that's the healthiest way to engage with this career or to have a path there doing it. So, yeah, I think we definitely felt very strongly that was an important thing. Like if we're going to tell a story about this kind of guy in his like late 20s, 30s, going through these struggles, we wanted to try and like end it on a message that we felt like maybe we don't see enough. And so, I appreciate you sort of highlighting that, because we definitely felt that was something, to the extent that we were like, okay, we think we're saying something worthwhile here. We felt very strongly that was an important choice, like among them being that he doesn't get me at the end. You know what I mean? Like he it's more like he recognizes the ways in which he was wrong, and hopefully has redeemed himself, at least in the form of like learning to apologize, and then take ownership and accountability for the things that he now needs to work on.
Well, it's all about the journey, not the destination, right? I think that's what it comes down to. And we have a saying in my household that I have with my boys. We always say practice is progress. We don't do perfection here, because perfection is like something you place on top of a pedestal you're never going to reach, and it's just going to drive you crazy getting there. So I think it's really kind of vital, the messages in this movie, and it's incredibly entertaining as well. And for everyone out there listening, available now, video on demand, me, myself, and the Void. I really highly recommend everyone watch this film. It's one of my favorite comedies of the year. And I think it's an essential movie as well because of the subjects in the film. And it's a movie, I think, Timothy, that you guys like talking about heavy issues without becoming a heavy movie. And I think that's really vital as well. And it works really well. The flow of the editing is fantastic. I didn't even mention Alexander Arsden's soundtrack, score in the movie is fantastic as well. I think what you and your crew have done here and your cast have been absolutely incredible. And Timothy, in your feature film as well, to boot, directorial debut as well. So I really do thank you for your time today and for your movie. You did a really great job here, and I can't wait for people to watch this. It's a fantastic film. Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the conversation. Yeah, really enjoyed being here.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.